turnouts ever, so I have to give all the credit to Penny and to Dawn and to Neil, to these folks that really are helping to put this together. And thank you, Penny, for the refreshments. I wish I could tell you I made all those cookies, but okay, I made all those cookies. I'm a politician. But anyway, this issue that we're facing with this synthetic drugs and this marijuana and everything else, it's a huge issue. And the hospital's seen it, the police officers are seeing it, the Border Patrol now seen it. And so what I've done is I've asked the city and the county to pass an ordinance to ban the sale of this synthetic cannabis until either we can tweak the legislation that's just recently been passed, and that might not have to happen, or until science catches up with it and we can find out or determine what is a better way to test it in the field. But in the meantime, there seems to be more questions than answers. And I think as a community, everyone obviously has an interest or concern. So Dawn Provencher, she's a counselor at
Academy del Sol High School here in Alamogordo.
She has done a ton of research. She's going to do a short presentation, like 15 minutes, and then Neil's going to do one. I think yours is more dealing with the law side of things, correct? Okay. And then we're going to hear just a little bit of how the hospital's dealing with this, what they're seeing, and then basically this is just question and answer and things that we can throw out there and discuss as a community and how we can start combating this issue and maybe give insight to the commission, the city and the county commission. Is passing an ordinance a good thing to do, or can they even do it? And how maybe this will help Holloman Air Force Base with the airmen if they're seeing an issue out there with this stuff. So, and with that, I will let Dawn get going, and there's refreshments, cookies I made if you guys want some, and coffee. So thank you very much for showing up here.
Thank you, Yvette. As she said, I'm Dawn Provencher. I know many of you, and it's great to see you here. I am a counselor and social worker with Academy del Sol High School with Alamogordo Public Schools. Very, very proud to be the counselor there. And that's what started my interest in these synthetic cannabinoids. I can tell you right now, if you know a teenager, they know far, far more about these substances than you do, than I do, than any of us do, possibly all put together. Now, my concern is they don't have factual information. My second concern is we don't know what the factual information is. This stuff has just popped up. Now, the reason I have this question on there, what's the big deal, Ms. P? That was the first statement I heard from one of my students when I said, I don't know what this stuff is. What is it? Now, I am delighted that I have a relationship with my students at school that when I ask them, I get information. They tell me sometimes much more than I want to know. And they said, this young man said, what's the big deal, Miss P? It's legal. So to our kids, they think because it's legal, that means it's okay. Because it's legal, it means it's harmless. Now, I will tell you this, I'm also proud to say that my students are beginning to see it's not harmless, and I am not hearing this question anymore. I'm hearing, oh, Ms. P, that's bad stuff, I think there are some users still at my school, but I don't think it took off like I was afraid it was going to. When Penny called me, I said, well, Penny, I don't know any more about this synthetic cannabinoid than anybody else. And she said, well, yeah, you talked with the health council. So the way I have learned is by asking my kids and looking on the internet. I also teach a class at Holloman Air Force Base for Central Texas College, and I've been in conversation with some of those young airmen also. So my information, I am not a clinician. I am not medical personnel. I know we have medical personnel here, and I hope what you will do is when I have a gap, please jump in, because that's not my area of information is the medical standpoint. But I think what we have in this room today is a wonderful cross-section of our community, and what I'll tell you ahead of time, what I'm going to end with is the only way we can combat this. I appreciate Yvette's attempts to get the laws enforced locally and statewide, But my contention is the only way we are going to deal with this substance, these substances, is by us having information and making sure our kids have information.
Before she gets started, I'm Carolyn Lee. I'm the Chief Juvenile Probation Officer for Otero and Lincoln Counties, and I was asked to come join Dawn to supplement some of her information. With me is Carolyn Casillas. She's the Juvenile Probation Officer Supervisor also for those two counties. And just real quick before she gets started on what it is, kind of the issues we're having with it, with the kids, we've noticed in the last year a severe problem with our probation clients. And although it being legal and easily accessible is a problem, most definitely, the kids will use marijuana. But as opposed to that, which isn't legal, but it's also very readily accessible. Our problem was the kids were using it because we weren't testing for it. So even if you put a law in effect that they can't go into the store, as long as they can still get it on the internet or somewhere and have the ability, it's a matter of using something that JPO couldn't find out. And we were seeing kids that were prior substance abusers, their UAs were coming back clean for all substances, but their behaviors were such that we knew something was going on. And if anything, their behaviors were deteriorating pretty rapidly. We had kids that were extremely irritable, very angry. They were also sick all the time. They had stomach problems, they had throat problems. They were forever not showing up for their counseling or not showing up for school and calling and telling us that they were ill. Parents were saying, you know, they're throwing up, they have diarrhea. They were going to their doctors, but the kid wasn't telling the doctor what was going on. So, you know, they weren't being treated appropriately. I made a phone call to my higher-ups in Santa Fe when we suspected what was going on and got approval. But understand, a regular urine test for us that tests for 5 main substances, we can test for meth and marijuana, cocaine, barbiturates, alcohol, is about $5 with the state contract. One test for the synthetic marijuana, and they brought it down, this is our new contract, is $25. And with state budget issues, it's very difficult to routinely test for that substance. There is the ability now, but the cost of it is prohibitive. But I did get approval. I told them, if our kids, just to get the word out that we're testing, a lot of them will quit. They don't like it better than marijuana. Right. A lot of them didn't like it at all. But it was a way to get something past their probation officer. It was a way to get something that we weren't going to find out. Once we started testing, we've seen a dramatic decline in our kids in the usage. But understand, the symptoms are so obvious. We have done a total of 15 tests in about the last 90 days. Of those 15, 13 were positive. The 2 that weren't positive, one was a retest. We wanted to make sure he wasn't still using and he had stopped and it came back clean. That's how obvious the symptoms are. These kids were easy to pinpoint, easy to pick. But again, we still can't routinely test. We're not telling the kids that, obviously, and we're still targeting particular ones, but I have to get approval every time we want to test for this because of the cost for it. Making it more difficult to get a hold of definitely will be easier, but as long as they can get it on the net, it won't fix the problem. We've got to be able to test for it. These kids are going to do whatever they think they can get away with as far as our clients, and they were getting away with it. And we had kids ending up in the hospital with major issues, physical issues, over this substance.
And she makes one point that I want to highlight. The kids don't like it better, but it's available. So that was why it had become the drug of choice. To go back to the very beginning, if some of you may not have any idea what this stuff is. It's a psychoactive herbal chemical product. Now, when you look at the packaging, and I have some pictures of packaging, and I know Neil has lots of visuals, but it's about the size of a tea bag that's in the foil wrapper. And that's about the quantity that's inside. One of the problems with this substance, the variability between they say inter and intra-batch variability is so high, so you don't know what's in this substance, much less, or this package, compared to a package of the same brand bought at the same time at the same store. The variability is so high. Oftentimes labs can't even identify the herbal substance that it's soaked in or sprayed upon. So you don't know what it is. There's not just one product, there are many, many, many. And here are the reason, this is the reason why. The fellow who developed this synthetic cannabis is still working. In fact, I have emailed him. He's a professor emeritus of organic chemistry at Clemson University. His name is John W. Huffman. And I know, isn't that funny name? About 10, 15 years ago, when he began to study these substances, he ended up developing over 450 varieties. And of course, what they hoped was there would be a valid medical reason use for the substance. And what I have found on the internet, and again, my medical people who are here today may certainly know more about this than I, but what I have found, there's one variety that has been found to have medical promise, and it's for the nausea during chemotherapy, which is also, of course, a use for medical marijuana. As she said, it's not detected by traditional urinary analysis, and the kids are very, very, very well aware of that. After I emailed Professor Huffman, I then did a search on the internet for his name and found some of the comments that he has made, and I thought this was very interesting. He began early on when he found out that Germany was the first place where it then left the medical lab into the general public. And his first comment was, it's like playing Russian roulette, because there are so many varietals, you don't know what the effects are going to be. And then it went on to say, well, if you go around paying $40 for a packet of leaves that contains who knows what, and then you smoke it, you're not a very responsible person. That's when he began to get he really was getting the heat for developing this stuff. And he was, of course, then trying to say, it's not me, it's you're choosing to use this. And then he made a comment in another report, you don't know what it's going to do to you. But this is my favorite, this is his most recent. Anyone who uses it is an idiot. And this is the man who developed it. This is a package. Now, of course, this is much enlarged. Like I said, it's about the size of a tea bag. The packaged tea, where it's sealed in the foil. I would estimate it's about a teaspoon to a teaspoon and a half of material on the inside. You can clearly see on the package it says not for human consumption, and of course the kids know that. That's laughable to them. I wrote a letter to the editor of the newspaper about a month ago, and thank you, Alamogordo Daily News, for printing it. The people who sell this as potpourri, or who would buy this as potpourri, are also idiots. I can buy a big package of potpourri at Kmart for $5. This is for about $40, $35 to $45, and it's a teaspoon and a half, and frankly, it smells awful. I found this is the first picture I came upon on the internet, just to show the number of varieties, and that's a fraction. That's just a fraction. In fact, some of the names that the kids tell me, they tell me now those are not even available anymore, that they're substituted with other names. In fact, what I have read on the internet, and Neil, I'm sure you can share more about this, the K2 is kind of the common moniker that we give it. The kids tell me that K2 is truly not even available anymore. It's monkey's breath and all these real appealing names. Now, I made this tiny on purpose. And let me tell you why. I go to presentations and people put things like that up and think I can read it. And I'm thinking, well, you got eyes better than me. But I did this on purpose. I got this off of a website, and it's one of the, in my day and age, I would have called it an underground, well, we didn't have websites, but, you know, an underground source. These are comments that users have made. This is the list of comments that people who think it's a good thing have said. Let me read some of it, and I wanted you to get the impact of how many comments were made. Strong dysphoria, that's the first one. Panic attacks, heavy body load, extreme nausea, strong feelings of hallucinations, fear, panic, anxiety, strong oral hallucinations, strong open eye hallucinations, racing heart, increased blood pressure, loss of feeling, drowsiness, bloodshot eyes, dilated pupil, extreme increase in appetite, altered time sense. You can see, doesn't it sound like a great idea? This is the list that I show my kids, and I ask them, is this what you're shooting for? Now, and of course, then they say, well, no, Ms. Provincial, but sometimes it doesn't do this. Sometimes, but what I can tell you from an anecdotal point of view is that's exactly what we have seen at home. That's exactly what we've seen, and I'm sure these ladies will tell you the same thing. I'm sure that a number of you in the room have been around marijuana. You should be familiar with its odor. You should be familiar with this odor also. It's very sharp. It's very pungent. It's not the sweet smell that marijuana has. And I'm sure some of you are familiar with the effects of marijuana. Whoever, now this is the world according to Dawn Provencher, but whoever calls this synthetic marijuana, I think is crazy, because the effects are so extreme. There's not a laid back, kind of chilled out, if I could use that term too. No, it's a panicky, hallucinogenic. It is not like any effects of marijuana that I have seen.
And even when they come down off the high, they still have behavioral effects. That agitated, irritable, very quick to anger. And that's when they're not currently under the immediate effects of it.
Exactly. In fact, one of the, well, this is kind of a general unfortunate area, there is so much that's not known about this stuff. But the medical community is starting to do preliminary studies, and this is what I could sort of glean from it. And again, our medical folks may have much more information than I. They're looking at the role of the synthetic cannabinoids and psychosis. Well, I'm not sitting here saying that marijuana is good for anybody. I will never say that. But I don't know that marijuana has ever been associated with precipitate psychosis. Prolonged psychosis, worsening previously stable psychotic disorders, and it may trigger chronic instability in persons with a family history of mental health issues. Isn't that exactly what we want for our teenagers? How many of you have teenagers in your life, whether they're friends or children or who you work with? They have enough trouble as it is to precipitate psychosis. I can't imagine anything more devastating to them. Now, when I first began to make phone calls, why are they selling this to my kids? Why are they selling this to my kids? I found very quickly that legislators and law enforcement are just as frustrated as we are in the community. Now, the question that I would just pose in general, is legislation the answer? I can't answer that. What I can say is that packaging labels are worthless. What labs are telling us, they get a packet, they test it, they compare it to the label, there is no similarity whatsoever. Like, as I said earlier, they can't even identify the dried herb that it's sprayed on. With over 450 combinations, the variations abound. I can guarantee you, just as kids stay ahead of us in this realm, someone making a buck is going to stay ahead of us with these 450 plus combinations. Scientific studies are lacking. I could find no information on human research. Now, this is something else I get from my kids. Anecdotal information is everywhere. I mean, you just Google synthetic marijuana, K2, monkey breath, or whatever, and you will get more hits than you can handle. And I have read reports of cardiac arrest. I've read reports of a drowning. The only death I found that was associated possibly was a drowning death after a young man had smoked this. But the kids say, Ms. Preventure, do you get this? Do you believe everything you read on the internet? And I thought, I think I used to say that. They are realizing that this is taking hold and just mushrooming, and they are not believing. They're getting to the point now they don't believe it. They're not believing anything that they're reading about. I think that's the answer right there. And I know that's very simplistic, but you don't know how heartened I was when Penny called, and then when Yvette called, and when my letter was in the newspaper, and I have kids talking with me about this, and I'll tell you another organization in just a moment that has gotten very involved. To me, this is the answer. This is the answer. I would say, Yvette, if you can get legislation passed, I might even vote for you. Those of you who know me know I was the head of the Democratic Party, but I know Yvette, we worked well on the spaceport, and I would applaud you if you can get something done about this legislatively, but I don't know if that's the answer. Yes, ma'am.
Well, you know, when we wrote that law, our law differs from the other states because actually Zach Cook helped me with it, and so did Kirby. We put in all the different chemical names, so
Right.
we didn't just outlaw K2 or spice. We have the chemicals are outlawed. Any chemical name we could find at that time, they probably need to update it this year. We added into that law, and so when they go around and they talk to their friends from Texas and they think that it's legal, it's not legal in our state, but the problem is it's not labeled. So when DPS or the sheriff's office go down there, since they're not labeled, they got to send them to the lab first, get lab results, then we can go bust the place.
Right.
And I don't know how we get around that as long as they don't properly label all the chemicals in there, but any chemical substance we can find, we even pulled the law after it got filed and we started adding more chemical names.
I think 14 are specifically named now.
Right, exactly. So we named a lot more than in other states' laws, but one of the things we need to look at too is expanding it, and ours covers as much as we could find on bath salts. But we need to obviously, you know, they keep coming up with new drugs. That's the problem. Right. And we can't keep up with that. And you know, Deputy LaSalle can tell you that, is that every single time we outlaw something, they come up with a new drug of choice.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yeah.
So,
that's the problem we're having right now.
And so we've just, and the problem is the legislature meets once a year, and that's why when Yvette had talked about doing a county ordinance, that's something that we could modify fairly quickly.
Right.
And hopefully, if we can get our commissioners on board, we can keep adding these names as they keep coming up with new substances.
Right. Great.
And part of the time, part of the problem with us, with we talk about being a aware community, it's not just the community leaders or law enforcement, it's our parents.
Right.
They think it's okay because the kids could go buy it. It says synthetic marijuana. You would be amazed at the number of parents we have come in who let them smoke it at home. Now granted, you have parents who let them smoke whatever else at home too. But even the ones typically who might have been what we call more responsible parents, we're letting them use this. Because the parents don't know how
They
bad
think it's a safe alternative.
right.
Safe legally
And
and
if
safe
it's legal, they ought to be able to use it. And
just one step that we took in this district is in our probation agreements. We got approval from the judges to list as a probation condition that they cannot have anything or ingest anything that's labeled not for human consumption, because that's how they get away with a lot of it. And so at least
but they can't use any
kids,
smoking mixture or anything labeled not for human consumption. So we're able to address it, but that's a very small population. We have a little over 100 kids on probation, but that's the population we're able to deal with. But the other kids, if we could just educate some of the parents, I think we could cut back on some of this.
Right. I've spoken with many parents who never heard of this stuff, and it was in their household. Never heard of it, I had to explain, we had to draw pictures. They had no idea. No idea. Yes?
Quick question. I haven't seen anything on your report. Is it chemically addictive? Do we have any research?
There's no human research yet.
It's very addictive. My name's Ralph. It is highly addictive.
With the kids that we've seen.
The kids that we've spoken to, it is highly addictive, which is a problem as well.
Well,
Yes.
part of it is that horrible feeling they have, that agitation, all of that. The only way to get rid of that is to use some more. So when they're not actively using, they feel bad.
The problem here, I've been well aware, I'm on the city commission, I've been well aware of it for well over a year. A buddy of mine owns a thrift store across the way from
Right.
one of those that's been busted. And what would, we got a lot of minds here. Our attorneys have looked at it and we don't know what to ban. And, the state's passed that deal and the city commission would be more than happy to do something along with probably the county commission. But what do we ban? That's what, you can't go ban potpourri, otherwise you're going to have a room full of old ladies in there.
Hey.
You know what I mean? And they have one that was called potpourri, and then the K2, the spice, Three Monkeys, I think was, and I'm well aware of it because my buddy calls me every single day saying, hey, why don't you do something about this? And our cops are just as frustrated as we are because
Exactly.
up until the 28th of November, the stuff they were selling over there wasn't against the law.
Right.
And so, I mean, if you guys can give us some ideas or help us draft an ordinance, we have some attorneys that would help us. Our attorney was sitting there trying to think of what we could do to ban it. And I know the county attorney is working on one, but he's having to be very, very careful we don't violate civil rights by banning substances that have a good use, a legitimate use,
Right.
in order to ban these. And
it's unfortunate common sense can't just tell us that a teaspoon and a half of potpourri.
yeah, well, it's kind of like along the same lines as spray paint, It has a legitimate use, but kids were putting it in bags and huffing it, and it's going to go something along those lines, and they've already got that in place as far as the 18 and over law. But like I say, I'm very frustrated with it because I've sat in the parking lot over there where his store is and watched the traffic in and out of this place.
And they're making a fortune.
They are. I've heard rumors that
Yeah,
these
I've heard
guys
it's
are making $30,000 and $40,000 a week off this stuff.
Well, and then the problem becomes too, and we'll talk about it too in a second, and I so appreciate your support. It's so widely available on the internet. Wait till I show you how many sources I found on the internet. Yes?
Isn't there a way actually to kind of figure out what the fingerprint, the chemical fingerprint of this is, instead of outlawing a single element, but the actual fingerprint itself, so no matter how they change it, it's still illegal?
Now, I'm certainly not a chemist, and there may be one in here, but from what I've read and seen, these websites will give the chemical notations, and there will be page after page after page after page, and the variants may be minute from one to another. So I don't know how broad the fingerprint on substances goes, but what's seeming to me is the variance just is infinitesimal. So I don't know. And when they spray it on different herbal substances, then you can't even, target that.
And we just learned in the last few weeks, about a month ago in Ruidoso with some of our kids, that you can buy the chemical online yourself and make your own. You can get your own,
Spray it on
your
grass.
own stuff and make your own.
Just real quickly, clearly we have approaches, a top-down approach trying to eliminate the substance, but it sounds like to me that the science and the greed driving this is going to be a step ahead of us.
Exactly.
We've got to, one of the things Chins is working to do, Executive Director of Chins, we have a program, we work with Choices, trying to educate youth on making positive choices. We are going to be proposing for the federal Drug-Free Communities grant. We've already have Paso del Norte Health Foundation committed to working with us, and we will be reaching out. We're going to start our first meeting in February to bring community, and it requires community partners to come together to do that piece. We will simply fiscally work to facilitate that. And clearly, we have to have the strongest bottom-up approach to empower our families and our youth, because they're always going to have an opportunity to get
Right.
by one way or the other. You know,
Right.
I hope we can get a handle on this, but it sounds like as soon as we get a handle on this, there's going to be something else. And if we don't have a strong bottom-up approach with our youth and families, beginning very early, you know, they're going to stay home.
Exactly. I'd like to share with you one of my last points, and then I know we have others to hear from. I'm a very proud member of the Optimist Club here in Alamogordo. We're very small. The Lions and the Rotarians have it all over on us on population, but the Optimists, I took this concern to them several months ago. And this is something that I'm very proud our organization has done. We drafted a letter to each of the businesses in town who were known to sell the synthetic cannabinoids and who had the likelihood to, just because they catered to a teenage population. We did not make accusations in the letter. We just said, please, make the choice not to sell this to the children of our community. And what we're doing is sending the same letters to our fellow Rotarians and Lions Club, Elks, etc., and asking them to do the same thing. And this is what you're talking about. We want to build a strong base in this community that says, don't sell it to our kids. We've got to talk with our kids. We have to listen to our kids. Attend things just as this. We were talking about, should we move some of the chairs out in case not many people come and it won't look like it's vacant? We are so thrilled that all the chairs are full. This is what I'm asking you to do when you get home. Two things. One, if you belong to an organization, take this information to them and say, as a group, whether it's my church group, whether it's my Lions Club, whether it's my sewing circle, I don't care what it is, make a stand that you don't want this sold to the kids in our community. Then I want you to, if you have access to the internet, just Google. I Google things real simply. I just ask Google. I just ask a question. Where can I buy K2 online? I did this last night, so I would have an up-to-date result. 102 million answers to that query. So we can get the 2 or 3 shops here in town to quit selling it. My kids know how to get on the internet, and most of them have access to a debit card. Think of how much time our kids are on the internet. Maybe that's another concern. And know that this stuff is readily available. That's why my concern that legislation is not going to do it 100%. It has to be us saying, you're not going to sell this to our kids. I have 2 more anecdotal stories to share with you. When we spoke with the Health Council, many of you were at the Health Council, and there was a young woman there who had already spoken with some adult users of these substances, and they said they wanted their voice heard also. And this was my response. This is my time because I was asked to do this. I'm not concerned about adult usage. I'm concerned about the kids in my community having access to this crap, and I don't want it in my town. Adults, do what you want. Kids, no. Not my kids, not on my watch. The second anecdotal story I'd like to share, especially because we're honored to have some of our folks from Holloman here. Now, this information did not come from any airmen at Holloman. I want to make that very, very plain. It was another branch of the services. It was a young friend of mine. I've been a counselor, worked with kids for many, many years, and it was a young person who had gotten in touch with me who has had several brave tours overseas. They were told, this young man was told, to use this substance by his commanding officer because it was legal and it would assist him with his traumas, with his possible post-traumatic stress that he may have suffered after his brave service in Afghanistan. Now, I am in no way saying, gentlemen, that is being said to airmen here, but I want you to know as community members that our military has at one time and I won't even say which branch. I will say it was not Air Force. The young men were told to use this substance. Again, the same rationale that our kids have used. It's available, it's safe, it must be, because I can buy it down the street. So, thank you so much, and I will pass it on to Commander LaSalle because he has lots of other information to give you. I am certainly not the expert, but if you want someone interested in this to come and speak with your group, I will be glad to, because I am interested, because I love your kids, I love my kids, and I want this to be a safe place for all of them to grow up.
Before he gets started, I think there's a sign-up sheet going around, and what we were thinking is, as information comes available, or if there's going to be other city meetings or county meetings, you know, if you want to be notified by email, we'll be sure to send them to you. Back here's the sign-up sheet. And also, just in case you want to go online, the Senate bill that was passed with the drugs is what they were referring to earlier, Senate Bill 134, and this is one we passed in January. So this is what's in effect on the state level right now.
Good afternoon, I'm Commander LaSalle with the Otero County Narcotics Enforcement Unit, and know most of you out there. Some of you I don't know, so we'll go from there. What we've got is, I'm going to touch base more on some of the law sides of it, and a lot of it, how it, it is affecting our community, and then as she touched on, as the youth in our communities, but as well as the adults. I think it does affect us in the law enforcement area with the adults. I'm going to show you some videos on here, and when you see these videos, think of this person being behind the wheel, under the influence of this stuff and those type of things. Think of, now that it is outlawed, what are they going to start doing to get their hands on it? Are they going to start robbing, stealing, these things that are going to happen with it? And also, who's going to start pushing this stuff? Because it's not going to go away. And so those are some things we'll touch on, and any questions that you may have through it, go ahead and ask them. I know sometimes we'll jump ahead a little bit, and that question may get answered throughout the PowerPoint. So, what I'm going to start with, hopefully if it all works, this is a mass overdose that occurred in Blaine, Minnesota, and this did end up killing one of the juveniles on it. And
I don't know how I made it through that night. That's how scary it was.
Most intense trip I've ever had in my life.
It was just like a zoo in there. You felt like you got hit in the face with a metal bar.
My brain felt like it was melting. Everything was shaking.
I was screaming, crying. I was trying to get people to calm down. I think I went straight shot to hell. Honestly, I think that's what dying would probably feel like.
And that drug there is a bath salt.
I should have just not done it. I should have just found my first instinctive not to do something like that. But then it's like everybody else was doing it and like whatever. And I was like, fine. Like most of my really good friends are doing it. I guess I'll try it or whatever. Since it's CCD, like taking a little pinpoint is enough to get you pretty messed up. So doing that huge line was what made everybody freak out. It was way too much. I've never tripped before, so Trevor told me not to, and then Timmy told me not to also, so I didn't do it.
Immediately after I started the line, I just knew that it wasn't going to be what I thought it was.
I just remember like somebody being like, Trevor's not okay, Trevor's not breathing, but like at that point, like nobody really knew what was going on because everybody was so like out of it. I remember the only thing that really chilled Trevor out was me and Tim Lemire. We held Trevor down and we started like singing to him.
I said, you guys need to call the cops. Cops need to come here. No, this is not okay. And then that's when he hit the ground and he started like, almost looked like he was seizing, but it was like fingers shaking on the ground and he was getting lifted off the ground from his own shakes. kid I've ever met. I wanted to be him growing up. He was the kid. He was the kid everyone knew everyone wanted to be. He was the cool kid. Like, Trevor was an amazing person.
It's like he's just away for a while and he's just going to hit me up one day, but he's not really going to.
He was getting on the right path, you know, he just this thing just crossed his path, and I don't know, something there. I guess God needed a new angel.
I think about it every day, all the time, constantly, probably. I would never touch another drug. Like, if we would have just been smarter and thought about what we were doing before we did it, like, we still would have had our friend here. Like, Timmy was our friend, too. Said we lost 2 of our friends that day then.
My remorse, like, in a way I feel guilty for that night, even though people tell me I shouldn't, and I know that I shouldn't, but there is a little guilt there always when I think about it.
That night gave me the strength to say, okay, I don't need this shit in my life anymore, you know? I mean, I'm not going to tell people not to do drugs. No, they're not going to listen to that. They're going to do what they're going to do. I would say don't take too many chances, because you never know which use will be your last. I just want to better my life after that and try to help other people better theirs and keep people away from doing the same stupid decision that he did, because he shouldn't have died. He should be here today. Just something that small can take something that big away from someone.
8 months later, I'm not over it. I can't get over it. I won't get over it. Like, I'm just not normal. And I really wish I could take that night back, because it messed me up pretty bad. I go to therapy twice a week just to try and deal with it. It's not worth anything to trip or to get high. Any of these people could die because of the stupid choice that you're making. Like, would you really want that to happen?
All right, yeah, ask yourself, is it serious? You know, I think that's pretty self-explanatory when you see that. A little history, I think she touched more on it. You know, the Clemson University scientists were researching this back in the 90s, and the compounds were never tested on humans. And was that his ultimate goal? I don't know. I just wanted to touch a little bit on it. At that time, you know, it's not, I don't think it's meant for human consumption. The type of synthetic narcotics that we're looking at right now that are illegal is the synthetic cannabinoids, the substituted cathinones, which are going to be your bath salts, salvia divinorum, and the Forum.m4v. It's not like this. Your synthetic cannabinoids, commonly referred to as spice, K2, a lot of what was touched on. Other names for it is going to be your 3 Kings, potpourri, incense. What we've just seen recently come through the checkpoint at Border Patrol is now, after we did do the raid on Fat Glass when the salvia became illegal, the owner of that business did come through the checkpoint again carrying once again, these illegal items that were taken from him. And now on the packages, it's called herbal tea and a ritual sachet are the most recent names that are being put on these packages. As we were seeing, these are some of the things that were taken. Crazy Monkey. It clearly lists on there that it's potpourri. It's 50 grams. You can see the sale price on there at $145. It's pretty expensive potpourri. You can clearly see on the package it does say not for human consumption. This photo's a little blurry. It's same stuff, made by the same company. This is 3 Monkey. You can see on here not for human consumption. Do not burn this product. And it does list on here these what has really been made. Through the scientists, what's really been made illegal here is these chemicals here, is what they've tested. And then it's going to tell you on the bottom, this product has been lab tested and is DEA compliant. I don't know why potpourri would need to be DEA compliant.
It's just another one of those common sense things that doesn't play in.
Yeah, and you know, I think it's a way to be able to sell this stuff legally. It's telling you not to use it. So how can we go after this manufacturer when they're telling you not to use this stuff? As we go after somebody to say, don't use Drano, don't drink Drano, don't, you know, these type of things. So, another one of the same products is Mad Monkey. And this one says it's incense, potpourri, kind of the same stuff. Now these chemicals that they list on there, and when you're looking at it, your normal drug tests that they make now are testing for these chemicals. And speaking with the DEA chemist out of San Antonio at his lab, the problem we're having with coming up with a standard to be able to test for this drug through urine is, one, it's not metabolized real well through the urine, so they're having a hard time being able to test for that. Two, every time we get a standard, and for law enforcement, we like to use field test kits, so we can immediately test it's illegal, they're going to get hooked up for it. Problem is every time we develop a standard for it in the lab, they can change this chemical and they add a molecule to it or they tweak it just a little bit, and it throws the complete standard off. So we're not getting, we're not getting the test kits to be able to say, yes, this is illegal. So law enforcement, what do? We take it because we know it's illegal. We send it to the lab. 6 months later, we get a lab result. You know, so it's that kind of time delay on this stuff. It's not making it real easy for us. This is what the back of that package looks like. So you can kind of see this is the plant material. I don't know what they're using as plant material. It looks like marijuana to me, but it's not.
It would be safer, probably, if it was.
Yeah.
I read an article that they were finding grass clippings in here, and then they were finding the chemicals that had been, of course, the herbicides and insecticides that had been sprayed on the grass that were also in there.
And this stuff that we have here, it does. It smells good. It has an incense smell to it. It's not a bad smell. Just another container, another way they're packaging it, other than. Okay, some facts about it. The cost ranges from approximately for $20 a gram to what we saw in that package was $145 for the 50 grams. Once again, seen most often among adolescents and young adults. The synthetic cannabinoids were banned by DEA with an emergency order. That was enacted back in 2010 for the entire country. Now, it was made, the K2 and those things were specifically made illegal sometime back, I want to say July here in New Mexico, July of 2010, after this emergency order came out. And but once again, that was just the synthetic cannabinoids. And
yeah, that just happened.
and our laws concerning the synthetic cannabinoids is they're treating it just as they would for the law enforcement. They're treating it as marijuana. It's actually written and just added into the marijuana statute book part of it, and same charge code and everything. But for your first offense on that is a petty misdemeanor for possession. Second offense, it steps it up a little to a misdemeanor, and your fines are $100, but not more than $1,000, and then imprisonment for less than 1 year or both. And then on the synthetic cannabinoids, it's the same as marijuana. 1 ounce but less than 8 ounces is going to just be your misdemeanor charge on it. And then at a ½ pound, which is your 8 ounces or more, you're going to go into your 4th degree felonies. Laws concerning distribution is identical. 4th degree felony for your first offense. Second and subsequent offenses is going to be a 3rd degree felony. And tried to exclude a lot of the wording on it. Didn't want to bore everybody with how extensive it gets into this stuff. Now, the law concerning distribution of the synthetic cannabinoids in a school zone. Your first offense is going to be a 3rd degree felony, and your second and subsequent offense is 2nd degree felony. Moving on to now what we have illegal is the substituted cathinones, typically called bath salts, also known as, you can read them, the White Devil, Pixie Dust, Super Coke, White Rush, Vanilla Sky, Bubbles, White Dove, Charge Plus. And this is kind of a photo of what it looks like. Resembles cocaine. That there says it's concentrated bath salts. Cost range on the bath salts, cost range $35 for 1 gram. Became illegal September 11th, 2011, and that was across the country. That was a federal law that was enacted. The bath salts are crystallized chemicals. They're snorted, swallowed, or smoked. They contain 2 powerful stimulants, and I'm not going to try to say that word. It's MDPV is the short way to say that. And methadone, which mimic cocaine, LSD, and methamphetamine. Methadone is a derivative substance similar to amphetamines and kind of gives a similar side effects. Made illegal to possess and sell in New Mexico on November 27, 2011, which is very recent. It empowered us in law enforcement to do something about it. Laws concerning the substitute caffeinoids. This is, it stepped up. It's being treated more as, other than your first offense for possession, to sell it, it's treated more as a cocaine or a methamphetamine. Your first offense on your possession is a misdemeanor. And your possession in the school zone with this stuff is going to be a 4th-degree felony. Now, they did make some exclusion. This is on the minors. The minors being in possession of this is a petty misdemeanor. Community
But with
service.
specific, something that you can do with them. We can't put those kids on probation. It's community service, a fine of not more than $100. Not helpful at all. That makes it less than marijuana. And this particular substance is far worse even than the synthetic cannabinoids.
Yeah, this is what they overdosed on in the Blaine, Minnesota video. Now, your laws concerning the distribution of the bath salts is going to be a first offense, 3rd-degree felony. Second subsequent steps it up in a 2nd-degree felony. The first offense in a school zone is a 2nd-degree felony. And your second subsequent offense is a 1st-degree felony in the school zones. Something that's kind of been new is the Salvia divinorium, or also Salvinorian A. And they're commonly referred to as diviner sage, Maria pastora, seer sage, purple saliva is what we hear about it, and methyl. This is what it looks like and what we purchased. And this one will clearly tell you what it is. It's telling you that it's Salvia divinorium. And these are sold in strengths. You have your 40, your 80, and your 160 strengths. Now, by the strength that you purchase this stuff by is how much it's going to cost you. We were buying the 160 from the store here in Alamogordo, and it was costing us roughly around $70. Taxes and all that was about $78. If you go back up, that's for that little, it's probably about that big. It's about a quarter size amount of stuff. It is sold by strength, and this is what became illegal on November 27th. There was state and New Mexico statutes. Laws concerning Salvia divinorium, I'll try not to bore you to death on that too much. It's identical to the bath salts. It's the same punishment for any possession or distribution of it. There's nothing that changes on it. According to the American Association of Poison Control Centers, at least 2,700 people have fallen ill since January to April of 2011. Of course, that's the last year. We don't know what 2012 is going to hold for us. Compared with fewer than 3,200 cases in all of 2010, and at that pace, medical emergencies related to synthetic drugs could go up nearly 5-fold by the end of the year. Common signs and symptoms, I know that we've gone over that. Labored breathing, rapid heartbeat, extreme paranoia. Your delusions and your hallucinations off your salvia and those type of things. As people are experiencing monsters, demons, aliens, they're complaining that it feels like they're in hell. Seizures, we heard on the one video that he was seizing so bad that he was actually lifting himself up off the ground. Suicidal thoughts and attempts are being seen. This is a video on somebody that's taking a hit on some Salvadorian. This will show you the effects of how quick they get this high and then how quick it goes away.
It'll work, it'll work. Drive through. Trying to. Let's see. Very good. All right. Say something. Try to stand up. You said you all right, so much right here. What do you feel? How do you feel? Stand up, you bitch. What was that? How did you do it? I really don't. Oh my God!
At this point, I think it's starting to wear off. It's starting to go away.
Dude, I know right. I know you not.
It's like a good time. What is hindering the control of these synthetics? Cheaper than most other drugs in relation. They do not show up in the common drug test. We're on the brink of, with you saying that you've been able to test for it and seeing what's on it. I think that's great. That's on the cutting edge right now, and it is testing for a few of those tests. For something to say that they have the salvia in their system, or the bath salts or anything like that, who knows what they're going to come up with. But that does make it difficult. The continuing changing of the formula and ingredients as they become illegal, of course that's going to be a difficult challenge. Selling under false advertisement, that's kind of self-explanatory when we look at those packages. I think our biggest defense on this is knowledge. I think the teenagers, the youth in our community, they need to see this. I mean, they need to see the way they're acting and the things that are happening with this. And I think for us in law enforcement, the distinguished odors. For example, the odor burnt marijuana. How many people have we busted by smelling the odor burnt marijuana? You can almost smell that if they're driving down the road and being behind their car. You can smell it and pick up on it. This stuff, what are we looking for? What kind of smells? How many different smells? What's going to turn us on to the fact that what they have is illegal? Now, other than the way they act, I wouldn't want that guy behind the wheel of a car. Now, one thing we don't have in New Mexico.
Do we go after them based on the effects? I mean, obviously that person could drive. Do we harass these people? Do we follow them and stop them? And I mean, I don't understand why the law You know, we can't seem to keep up with making the substance illegal. Why don't we make the act illegal, the act of operating, the act of public intoxication? And at least harassing that way. We can do that today. We can go right now and do that today.
You just took the words out of my mouth.
Okay, good. That's what we got.
In New Mexico, we do not have a public intoxication law. Is it something that the city could set forth? I don't know. A public intoxication law for somebody like this would be great, as well as somebody walking down the street that is...
But you'd have to test for it, though, wouldn't you?
Yeah, you would have to come up with some type of test. Now, as far as them driving under the influence of this, one, as a law enforcement, you got to prove impairment.
Right.
Now, we prove impairment, and how are we going to take them to the hospital and do a blood draw on them? How are we going to prove that they were under the influence?
Can we just videotape a sobriety test? Isn't that enough? And then falling on the ground? I mean,
it isn't enough. It
should be.
It should be.
Absolutely. You can have someone with an epileptic seizure, though. I mean,
absolutely.
You know, there's just so many variables.
We would have to be able to test and prove that they are under the influence of this. It's definitely where it's going. I don't know. It's a touchy subject. That's why we're here. David Rose, June 2011, 18 years old. He was high on a marijuana lookalike called
Before you get into questions, would you want to say a couple of words?
Sure.
This is Jean from the hospital, and I asked them to come because we understood the hospital sees a lot of things that maybe in the field and the police officers and just the average people don't see. So just quickly, if you can share with us what you're seeing up there.
I'm Jean Jazz. I'm the director of the emergency department at Gerald Champion. And this is a problem. Your both presentations, you guys were right on. And we do see that at our hospital. And we've had kids as young as 12 years old come in with this. And we don't see all the kids that experience this at our hospital. We only see the ones that have severe signs and symptoms that are associated with it, and they come here. Absolutely, like LSD effects, they are very agitated, they're very aggressive, whether it's from the medication itself, or what, I don't know if you'd call it medication, or they're just so terrorized by what's going on with them that I have to look at the safety of our staff in the department. There are times when very young people with arms this big around maybe a little bigger than that, but take 8 to 10 people to actually restrain them, to keep them from harming the people that are in the department trying to help them. Like you said, there's not a test that would say this is what they're on. Again, we look at the signs and symptoms of what they're experiencing, what they're demonstrating. And if we don't have anything in their urine drug screen, we automatically go to that they're on one of these many chemical things that we're seeing in there. Unlike some of your other drugs of choice, narcotics, there's reversal agents for those. There's no reversal agents for these things, so you just have to let it run its course to the point where sometimes they require leather restraining. Some have required intubation, where we have to actually breathe for them because of seizures or whatever else. They totally lose that capacity. It's prevalent. When I see the front page of the paper where there's been a bust, I'm like, yes,
because we do see a decline after that, but then in days by, then we see more kids coming into the facility for that. It's a real problem, it's a real danger. I don't know what the answer is. I think this is great to have a forum to discuss it. It is out there, education, educating your kids, letting them know it's bad stuff out there, don't touch it. Of course, we all know that if it's out there, they're going to find a way to get to it. But I appreciate your time. It is an issue. I appreciate the Department of Public Safety that rushes to our rescue when we really have all hands on deck trying to restrain and help these kids and people work through it, and we just don't have enough, so they come to our aid quite readily, and we appreciate that. So thank you for your time.
And then just really quickly, because I know some of us are going to have to leave right away, but I want to take just a second to introduce Ralph and Megan. And these, most people know each other through law enforcement. Ralph and Megan have a shop here called Peace Out. And I just want to make sure everybody understands that they are on our side. They have a skate shop. There's usually a lot of kids hanging around there. They look kind of hippie-ish, you know. And I don't want there to be a misunderstanding of I don't want Ralph and Megan and what they're doing with these kids in this community to be confused with what we're actually trying to fight about, you know, fight against. So I appreciate you guys coming in. I know we're kind of running out of time, but maybe later you can just, if anybody has any questions as to what you guys are doing, the outreach you're doing with the kids. I mean, these are the people that are in the trenches talking to the kids that are actually doing these drugs or wanting to get away from these drugs when they can't go to their parents and they don't go to the school counselors, you know. So I think as a community, these are really important people in our community. We really need to get behind you. I thank you for your efforts.
And my kids know that they cannot buy at Peace Out.
So they don't sell anything like that. So, and just question, answer, what, as a community, how do you guys want to do this? What do we want to go do from here? How should we try to do it legislatively or on a city or county level?
Well, an important question I think I need to ask, and that I'm sure many of you have answers to. Because this has been presented as legal, and so there's a perception of, at least initially, that it was okay, has it broadened a wider catchment? In other words, have more kids gotten involved in this drug than would normally through other illegal substances? Are more kids using drugs as a result of this legal, what used to be legal?
Can I answer that? And I don't know what I'm just saying. Jim Hecker, who's the CEO of the hospital, was at my house the other day. He said, we've got a real problem. We have run out of other straps at the emergency room.
Wow.
Because they have so many people in, and the lady spoke to this really good. So you don't think it's not full of glory from the hospital. Restraining runs out of facilities and actual materials. And they don't know where to buy another strap anymore. I said, gee, I've got a closet full of belts in there that I've outgrown, so maybe you could use something.
But I think there's experimenters are experimenters, users are users. I can't say that it's...
Well, I would say with our clients, ones that truly don't want to get caught and be in trouble. They don't use anything we can test for, or that, you know, if it was something we can test for, I think we definitely have kids using K2 that wouldn't be using anything else if K2 wasn't there, because they know we're testing for the other. Okay?
Yeah, I would agree.
So I definitely think there's an increase in that population. Now, these are your more oppositional conduct disorder type kids that are doing anything they think they can get away with that's kind of edgy. But some of those kids won't profit. They're doing it because they think they won't get caught. They're not smoking marijuana anymore, the other things. And some of them went for periods they didn't smoke anything until this became so readily available and they started using it. So I would say, at least for our population, yes.
Yeah, and I just wanted to, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say that JPO's done a great job at catching these kids. The tests are very expensive, so it's hard for us to get the state to run them. But what's funny is sometimes we've tested some kids, and then we go to our Alternative to Drug Court, the NET program, and other kids realize that we've been testing, and they start self-admitting, and we didn't even know. But I'll tell you that these two Carolyns here will keep their face completely straight, like, yeah, we knew about that. And I'm thinking we did not know about that. So they've been great, because even testing a few kids has brought out, and then we realized, wow, that's pretty widespread when the rest of them admitted. So.
Right. Well, one of the things we are doing, I know the laws are very similar to marijuana laws, we're not treating it like marijuana. If we
Right.
have a kid test positive, we're treating it like we had a positive meth or cocaine test.
Right.
We're treating it much more seriously. Because for the probation clients, it's a probation violation whether it's marijuana or cocaine or meth or whatever. But a first-time marijuana user will get a much, we take it seriously, but not nearly as we would if we've had a kid come positive for meth. And we're treating that at this level because that's the seriousness of it.
I had talked with our city attorney when we first started looking at this, and one of his ideas that came up was to tax it. And I don't know if it's legal for us as commissioners to do that, but you know, it would only come back within the city of Alamogordo to tax it. But you know, if we put $100 a packet tax on this, you're going to limit who can afford to buy it. You know, and I don't know if that's an option. No.
Why not just move up to the county?
Well, then the county passes an ordinance and run these guys out of town. So, but you know, I don't know if that's an option or if that would help combat it. Or what's that?
So I'm unaware of, how that would affect. I mean, does it? I mean, it's illegal at this point to sell, possess. I mean, if you're distributing it.
Well, I think one of the things that was said in the beginning, I completely agree with. We're always going to be playing catch up with the laws, but county and city ordinance we can change more quickly.
Right, exactly.
So, you know, you can't just say, well, it's illegal in the state. If we have laws that even mimic the state law, and except we can add things to it as we become aware, that would at least allow us to make those changes much more quickly than we can at the state or federal level.
Josh, your answer to
I have a question.
taxing it, excuse me, just is the only thing when you do that, you're just saying, yeah, it's okay, you're legalizing it.
Well, we're trying to find a way to combat it without having to limit it to just specific drugs. You know, because like they're doing every time we limit and we make something illegal, they just change one molecule in it, and okay, now they got a different product and it's not illegal anymore. And that frustrated me.
Most of that is being done out of state, not here.
Yeah.
So if just little Alamogordo changes and adds this, it's not, you know, it would have to.
Yeah.
I think we can keep up with it much easier. And it's not like we have somebody local for the most part doing this. You know, you'd have to have the manufacturer who change a molecule because this town did that, or a couple small across the way.
You know, part of what you got to understand about Alamogordo too is we're really limited as to the legislation we can do to affect this. I mean, we can't pass a law or an ordinance that would make it more than a misdemeanor. We cannot pass any ordinance that affects a juvenile. That all comes from the state. We're not even allowed to
For me,
touch
it's
that
more
law.
the distribution of it, the sale of it. If you just stop them, yes, some of the kids can get it on the internet, but it would stop them the immediate ready access. Being able to walk from the high school over to Granada, get high in the parking lot, and walk back to school.
I'm telling you, we got to get the act. We've got to get the public intoxication and the driving while.
I agree.
That's what we got to get. It's the only way to really stop it, I think. I mean,
But
right
stopping
now.
the sale of it here, it's a small step, but it is a step, and I really think it would curtail some of it, you know? I mean, a lot of parents that don't know, they're gonna know when packages arrive at their house, and you have to have a credit card to order off.
But now
It will make it a little more difficult if you can't walk into the store.
The state has already made it illegal, right?
Right, but what we're talking about is when they change the one little chemical component. We can change the city ordinance much quicker than you can change the state law.
The problem is knowing what that component is going to take 6 months to do.
If this is illegal, why is it, we busted these shops, right, that are selling it, why are they still in business? Why are they still allowed to sell?
There's laws.
Well, because we still have to go through the criminal justice system on them. We still have to go through the prosecution on them.
So they're waiting for a court date.
Oh, absolutely. But
keep selling.
their business,
But they
you
keep
can.
selling the,
They're not selling those products. That's illegal. That's been removed from them, and they are aware of that.
They just
What they
switched
can
it.
sell is they can sell the pipes. They can sell whatever incense that they're selling. That's legal incense that normally costs $5. So those are what they're selling now.
Right.
If they're selling this stuff again or out the back door, believe me.
I'd like to also add that they don't have to go into the store. Many of you are probably not aware, but they deliver it like pizza. You can call up, they'll deliver it to the skate park.
Yeah. So that's where we still have to infiltrate and we still have to get.
But I also read, and when I was reading about the bust on Sam's, I read about it on the paper, it was front page, and then I always read the police blogs, so I went over to the police blogs and I noticed that a homeless, 20-year-old homeless man was busted on possession of synthetic cannabinoids and charged with it. So here you have a whole store full of synthetic cannabinoids. They are in major possession by the pounds. But we're arresting the 20-year-old. If the 20-year-old homeless guy could be arrested for possession of 1 bag of K2, why can't the owners of these stores also be held to the same laws?
They have to make it clean order. They are. I can speak to that one. That was, the charges were filed on that case.
Okay, so they are charged with...
Yes, sir. Correct. Yeah, they've been charged with felony distribution. One of the problems that we look at a local level, again, Kelly Wallace, CPS director, is enacting a local ordinance. I understand what Carl was talking about, the changes. But that's gonna take some technical, how do we know what's different communication we're dealing with. But the local ordinance is very limited on what we can do. We can't charge juveniles, as a commissioner referenced, and we can only go with a petty misdemeanor elements. We do not want to have distribution or possession with intent to distribute this stuff as a petty misdemeanor. At the state level, this is felony. So the laws are in place. We have the laws. The problem is the testing. And that's a situation we're running into. We take the stuff, send it to the lab, 6 weeks later, we're lucky. We get a result, then we go back and charge them. All we can do, again, in this case, is the catch-up. We've been doing that. They've got this new stuff marketing now that's the sachet, the tea, things like that. We went, took possession of it, sent it to the lab, and we're waiting for results on that. So I think one of the frustrations we're going to deal with until we can get some better chemistry in this stuff is we don't have a field test kit. You can go, seize it, send it to the lab, get it back, make the charges, and in that time that we're delaying, how much will they sell? So that does frustrate us, and that's kind of got us handcuffed. But we do have laws about this, and when everybody be clear, understand, I think there's been some confusion. We do have laws against synthetic cannabinoids, caffeinones, and salvia. What we retained in October from other shops and got back in December, kind of a quick turn, that way, was synthetic marijuana. So they know it's illegal. They've been told it's illegal. It's just the stuff is being marketed in different packages with nothing on there to say that this is synthetic marijuana. We've talked to some DEA agents because we're realizing that this stuff is in warehouses somewhere. Somebody is shipping this stuff. The internet example of 100 million or whatever hits, there's probably tens of thousands of places across this country that's making this stuff, packaging this, and sending it. So we can deal with it at a local level, but I think we're going to continue to be frustrated with this stuff until we can get some federal intervention on this thing, working these cases on the internet, where they're selling it, distributing it. I mean, they're sending this stuff by UPS. I mean, that's got to be a violation of multiple federal charges, but the problem is, are they dealing with it with the sense of urgency that we're seeing it at a local level? They probably have resources that are going to be taxed just like ours, but I think there should be a push, maybe at a federal level, to get them involved in looking at this stuff, getting this stuff off the internet, finding out where these people are getting this stuff from, California, wherever, New York, Florida, and handling it at that way. We'll continue to handle it locally, but again, it's a catch-up. It's a game of catch-up. So that's a frustration that we're experiencing here. And again, we've looked for a number of years, or a number of months, at something local, ordinance-wise, but again, it's just to petty misdemeanor cases, adults and older, 18 and older. That's it. We can't deal with that in juveniles, and we'll never be able to go with family. So.
How come you don't have a field test for it?
Well, like we've been saying, Wayne, this stuff is I guess the chemical footprint of this stuff constantly changes, and currently they don't have a field test for it. There is nothing out there. If we can get a field test, we can seize it, we can test it, seize it, charge the person, and move on. We don't have that.
It's because it keeps changing.
Well,
it's not a matter of there is a field test. We don't have the money, we don't have the funds or anything like that. It's just they don't make one.
Yeah, that's one thing that's holding us back. they're working on that. I know. I'm getting a field test once that happens. Again, if it changes the location, hopefully, it's just, I think the science has to catch up with what's been going on.
Really quickly, because I know a lot of you guys have to leave, so I can't tell you how much I appreciate all of you coming, and Penny for helping with this, and Dawn, and of course, Commander Neil. So, but I just really appreciate it. And what I want to ask is everybody that signed that sign-up sheet, if what I'd like to do is, I'd like to send everybody an email just saying thank you, but I also, in doing so, like to put those emails, obviously, the address is open, so everybody can see who was here. So if you hear something, if you see something, if you're seeing something on the internet, or if I'm learning something on a state level, or, you know, Congressman Pierce was going to try to make it, he's in town right now, but he wanted to come in this late into the meeting, so he's here, and we really should have gotten him down here, but he was in Mascalera before here. But, I mean, I'm asking, is it okay with everybody that's here if I send an email out with all your addresses visible, so you can communicate with one another, is the only reason I would do that. So, if not, we'll take your name off, but I think it's important that we're here to talk about this, and obviously these could go on, these discussions forever. Maybe the city will put it on an agenda sometime, or the county, and but any ideas, anything we can come up with to combat this? We've got a great group of folks here that really care about it, and I just appreciate everybody coming, and please eat those homemade cookies.
Where is the sign-in sheet?
It's right here.
I'm kind of connected with Peace Out, but I've noticed that through the years since they started this war on drugs, there's so many failures. Some people say we lost the war on drugs. It's just so up and down. So let's really brainstorm and come up with something that maybe will work. Maybe go to the school and punish these children in the school.
Right.
Instead of taking them, dragging them through the court system, ruining their records for the rest of their lives. And get back to the basics and try to change the drug war, because so far so many aspects of it have worked, so many haven't.
Right.
And our system's already so full of drug-related crimes that those people don't need to be there.
That's right.
So let's try to use some common sense with what we do against our children, please. Maybe the school system can help.
I just want to say thank you to Yvette.
Oh my God!
Thank you for putting this
She was right.